Inspiring presentation. We have quite a while for questions, so who would like to start? Who would like to ask a question? Okay, I'll take. Would you like to take them in threes or one?
Up to you.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll take them in threes. So the lady here. Do we need a?
I can ask a question.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so just three very quick ones.
Make it quick one.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, you spoke about the mining tax, which is obviously top of mind for the business audience here. You said obviously the problems that UPMD would have moved to resolve the issue. But what do you think could be done? I mean, should the tax be slightly lower? Because in order to address some of the poverty and other economic problems you've identified, you do need to collect revenue, but at the same time you want to attract foreign investors. So what do you think your policy would be on that?
One here in the second row.
First, I'd like to actually correct Richard for saying that the Southern Province is one of the poor area of Zambia. By Zambian standard, it's actually one of the richest. Mr. H.H., we've had a lot of conversations on Crossfire with you, and we've addressed a lot of the issues. And obviously, this time you didn't make it. I don't know what lessons you learned from this election and what you're going to do 18 months down the line. But while you are in the opposition, what role do you think you're actually going to play to help turn around the situation, or does the system actually doesn't give you the opportunity?
Third one, yeah, we just the gentleman in the middle. Yes. Do you want to wait for the microphone, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Sir, you ran a superb election campaign in which the UPND expanded beyond this traditional base, making full game. But you touched on the fact, as you were gently put it, that you were eased out from your victory. On the day that President Goodluck Jonathan has formally conceded that he lost the democratic elections, what do you feel that you can do to ensure that the same thing doesn't happen in 2016 or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much to all the questioners. The first issue of the mining tax and the importance of generating revenue to fight poverty. I think this is really the crux of the matter. How do you fight poverty? You have to generate revenue to invest. For example, to take a young person, to give a young person an opportunity in life. What would you give a young person so you can give them a future? What would you give? Education. But how will you fund education for those who cannot afford it? I'm not talking about Against children. I'm talking about the child from Chawama, Kalingali, those who come from the compound. You can only support that child, as I got the support from a village, through a scholarship, through a whatever financing instrument you want to choose. But to do that, you have to generate money from someone. It can only be a business. It can only be a business. If you're talking of donor funds, those funds come from businesses in those countries where they generate. So I think the issue is that to fight poverty, to generate treasury income is not questionable. It's a question of ensuring that you support businesses to survive and to grow so that they can generate excess revenue beyond their operating costs. And basically you can tax that revenue. So the problem with that tax is that it's a turnover tax. as I said at the beginning, it does not recognize the cost of, mining operations. And I don't even know how to decide. If you ask mine how it's operating in Zambia, ask them a question, were you consulted? Was there any engagement? The answer is there was none. So how was it decided? SAMHSA. We don't do things like that in this area, in this age. So I think what we're saying that a fair, appropriate tax system that recognizes the importance of the mines to survive and to grow so that they can generate revenue which you can tax as a government and then be able to support the child in school and give that child an opportunity to gain skills, make that child competitive as they look for a job, or indeed entrepreneurship opportunity. I think that's the difference. That's the difference we bring to the table. It's not a question of whether we don't need to collect tax or not. We do need to collect tax. But I'm also not a great believer between the two choices of allowing businesses to grow, leaving them enough income to grow so that they can expand, so that they can create contract opportunities for other small, medium-scale businesses. That is better than milking blood, because tomorrow you have no milk. It's as simple as that. So I don't think the two are contradictory. No, it's the manner in which they are being done. So the next question is, in the transmission of results to the National Transmission Center. The situation we have in Zambia is that there are stages of these processes where sometimes only workers or officials of the Electoral Commission sit alone in a room. I don't think that should happen again. Let stakeholders, few as they may be, sit in each room of these stages so that we can follow through the figures. Another, for the first time in the history of our country, election results were announced in blocks. 50 constituencies announced at once. The history has been each constituency is announced individually. So you can quickly check if there's an anomaly or not. As I say, the fact that we did not support our people, those who support us to go in the streets, does not mean there were no anomalies. As I said, we value the country's stability more than anything else, and hopefully we use this opportunity to make amendments in terms of lessons to the processes to make them open, accountable, transparent. In terms of the Jonathan story, nobody would raise a finger when an election is being there. I've lost elections before. You've never had me raise a nation. But if there are flaws, we'll raise a nation. Not for our gain. I think for democratic development. That's maybe what I would say over Jonathan issue. And it's also important in Africa that ruling parties must step aside through an election process to create this area of opportunity for other players to take office, to be able to implement their own vision and policy choices, as I said. I'm sure all of you know that in a democracy you should only assume office through elections. But if you think you won an election and no one hears you out, you begin, sometimes, if you don't think deeper, you can begin to develop, groups can begin to develop negative measures to protect their vote. And those who are misbehaving will continue misbehaving, both of which are not good for democracy and peace and stability, and therefore development. I think it's important that ruling parties leave offices when they've lost an election, and then others move in. For Africa, for West Africa, for all of us, it means that there's no need for people to have negative things in an electoral process. That would be destructive to stability of the country, especially to progress and development. As a responsive opposition leader, By the way, I hope you realize the election results have redefined politics in Zambia. We had 11 candidates. 2 of us were 47, 48% apiece. The 9 candidates shared 5% of the vote. So we, as the leading opposition, acted responsibly by calming down the tempers of our supporters. That, I think, is an act that I think we're not fully appreciated as an opposition leader, but I think it's very important. We will continue providing our checks and balances. We offer policy choices that are different from those of the peers on a regular basis. Sometimes it gets us in trouble, ends us a night in the cells. We don't really mind. It shouldn't be like that. We'll continue our role of checks and balances while we remain in the opposition. We believe it's only for 6 months. Thank you. To the postal votes issue, you have a lot of influence to many voters in Ghana. Please utilize that influence. 3 things PF has done well. I don't shy away from answering questions. I have to think very hard. I think you all know the 90-day story.
Yes.
More money in your pockets in 90 days. More jobs in 90 days. Constitution in 90 days. I refer to it. We are 1,128 days. That's what it took to deliver the draft. So, I really have to struggle here. But I would like to help you to help me answer that question, if you can, outside after this meeting.
The lady just down.
Thank you very much. My question is based on the announcement that the Zambian government just made a week ago that they're going to formulate the diaspora engagement framework policy. So there's a lot of concern. I come from a civil society organization led by Zambian diasporans here, and there's a lot of concern that there's not enough momentum to maintain the political will to see this policy formulation process through. So we're actually formulating a consultation that we want to run here so we can filter some of what the people want to say here. So it's great that you've come and you've taken the time to address us non-voting citizens of Zambia. So my question is, what does the landscape look like after if UPND was to come into power? Because the policy framework is just step 1. The next step will be, how do we implement what the policy is saying? How do we engage us to actually contribute to the economy, to contribute to the social economy of the country? So that's the question. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I want to find out some of the 3 things that you've identified that PF has done very well. I've heard you talk about the negatives. I just want to find out if there are any 3 things that you spotted that PF has done well. Thanks.
So what's the PF done well? The diaspora and rude boys.
Yeah. I think the issue of cadence, my brother over there, is really a sad and ugly development in our country. I wouldn't wish it, to obtain in any other country. This is a phenomenon that is basically growing and is associated with leaders. And how can we solve problems through physical confrontation? How can we solve differences of opinion through physical confrontation? We call it the Panga phenomenon in Zambia. Pangas are supposed to be used before the technology changed in the sugar estates in Nakambala to cut sugar cane. But now they're used to maim citizens, family members, because of difference of opinion. I want to agree with you that there should be no room, no space for this kind of behavior. I'm sure you followed the PF presidential candidate adoption process. Some candidates could not enter the election hall in Kabul because the pangas them out. It's common knowledge, and it was taken as normal. It cannot be normal. So Arminio situation, I share this view deeply. I reflect on this issue deeply. As you know, the UPND is largely a victim of this phenomenon. And normally we are friends. I'm sure you remember during a by-election in Livingston, unfortunately, we lost a life within the PF camp, and I was framed of matter. I hope you have not forgotten. 7 of my senior leaders and I were locked up. But this individual was killed within the PF camp in a by-election. God is great. It didn't take long before people came forward to take us out, to help us get out of the cell by admitting what happened amongst themselves. We cannot continue with this stuff. I agree with you. But we need all of our collective efforts. Not happening there. We don't want the country to degenerate to what it is already today. Please help. Zambians who are in this room, you have a say, a very strong say. Businesses that are in this room and operating in Zambia, tomorrow it will move away from political issues to an issue where a worker is not happy with the salary increment. They will mobilize pangas and deal with the employer. We're not far from that. This cannot continue. The diaspora engagement policy. I'm not too sure about how well-meaning this policy is by the PF. I'm not too sure. I haven't applied my mind. All I can say from our part is that the diaspora is very, very important. The skills held by the Zambians in the diaspora, the contacts that they have, the network of friends that they have, your ability to take advantage of the financial markets here to raise resources for projects in Zambia cannot be underestimated. I'm not just talking about remittances. I'm talking about capital raising based on where you work. Some of you work for banks, some of you work for venture capital funds, some of you work for various organizations and the friends that you interact with. For us, we would like to actively work with yourselves in this area and encourage you to assist the development efforts in Zambia. That's the equation that we see you most valuable. So that's all I can say about ourselves.
All right. And the lady that's behind.
Thank you for your comments. On the back of the diversification question, I'd be interested in hearing your comments, particularly to the agriculture sector and government policy towards it. How you would see the subsidy administration and the input program as well as a broader piece of the agriculture sector. Thank you.
From the lady there at the back.
Good evening, Mr. President. Sorry for the household. I come from a medical background, and basically, what I'm about to ask is a statement as well as a question. What are you going to do to improve? I've heard you speak about how you're going to go about improving healthcare in Zambia. I'm a nurse and I'm an intensive care nurse who have seen the benefits of people and how well they do with these very basic equipment and services. And when I go to Zambia, it's I feel very sad when I visit the UTH. I stood brought in dead one time waiting for my uncle for an hour, and I saw 30 bodies brought in dead at that particular time. We don't have a cardiac arrest facility in Zambia at the moment, and some of my relatives had to take some dead bodies from the UTH to the mortuary of their own. There's a lot of work, I think, and our healthcare is way below standard, and it is very appalling. And also, what are we doing about our president health touring and other political members touring? Who has a voice for the basic Zambian who cannot get a flight when they're sick to go outside of the country and seek treatment? Thank you.
Can I also add a question here, which I think comes from that? I mean, you're a businessman, and when you are president, do you think you might be in danger of being perceived as having a conflict of interest? And would you therefore consider putting your businesses into a blind trust while you are president? Yeah, I mean, sorry, that's 4 questions.
No problem. You're the boss. That's okay.
The moderator, I'm being moderated.
Yeah, absolutely. Public Order Act says, what do we do? I think I did touch on it a little bit when I was making a presentation. Yes, the Public Order Act is a piece of legislation comes from our colonial heritage. Mainly at the time it was meant to restrict people of color from moving freely in case they engage in organized work that may lead to independence. That's understood, but over time the Public Order Act has been amended. I think positive amendments have been made to it. For example, one controversial aspect is that if we need a UPND to hold a meeting, we need to notify the police 7 days before the meeting.
Please take note of the selection of words I'm using. We need to notify the police about our intentions for holding a public meeting at least 7 days before the meeting is held. So, but over time, this was not an issue. Under the MMD leadership, this was not an issue. MMD under President Chiluba, the late Chiluba, may so rest in peace, the late Mwanawansa, was not an issue. President Banda was not an issue. It only became an issue when PF came into office, my brother. Maybe these are the good things PF has done. That the interpretation was changed to that you need a permit to assemble. You don't need a permit. It was never intended to be interpreted that way. But the PF, in fact, I think some of my detentions are having to do with having a meeting which was not authorized. And we saw this draconian negative interpretation of the Public Order Act under the PF. As the law stands, it's not a big issue. And I think when PF leaves office in 16 months' time, God's help, and through an election, for us, that interpretation must not be questioned, which means that we will probably have to amend the Act to make it very, very clear, and that no one would take advantage of any perceived ambiguity in the interpretation of the law, so that people can have their freedoms. I mean, are these the times that you can restrict people's movement? Especially for democratic reasons, or to visit their relatives, indoor meetings? Absolutely not. So I think that's really my answer to that. It's a little bit uncivilized to use a piece of legislation like that to restrict even political campaigns. This is the environment we lived under prior to the January 2020 election. Even the performance we've seen was again at the backdrop of these restrictions arising from the interpretation of the Farm Bill. I don't think we should continue. If we need to redraft the whole law, then we will do that. To make it clear. The diversification question, agriculture. I think agriculture is, Madam, of great potential for our country. Agriculture is a great employer, large employer, if it's structured properly. Some of the distortions in our agricultural sector is really arising from the cost of production. And I think in our manifesto we've been talking about looking at lowering the cost of production from inputs. Things like, of course, we will talk about obvious technical issues of efficiency. Yield per hectare. But there is a big issue on the cost of inputs, which we would like to focus on, and also to get on to agro-processing. I mean, Congo consumes a lot of melon. Why sell maize to Congo? Why not sell melon to Congo? So that you can retain jobs in the milling subset. Why sell maize to Botswana instead of stock feed to Botswana? These are basic issues. And when you have a stock feed, aspect of your agriculture, then you assure the raw producers of the market for their produce. We also have problems to rely on the rain-fed crop. This year the crop has failed. Those of us in agriculture know it. Rain-fed crop has failed. We can improve the yield assurance through irrigation. To do that, we need to allocate resources to support farmers in acquiring capacity for irrigation. You all are aware that, those of you who are close to Zambia, that we are safe to control 35 to 40% of fresh water in the SADC region. What are we doing with that water? Are we harvesting it? No. Again, back to the question of leadership. You can't run away from the question of leadership. To create opportunities in the agriculture sector that will make investing in that sector attractive. Retail, market, financing of agriculture, marketing, storage, all of that. I don't want to bore you tonight. The health sector. I want to agree with you, madam. This is a disaster. The health sector in Zambia is a disaster, total disaster. Health service delivery has collapsed by and large. UTH is a place I go into regularly. Regular visits in the evening, in the casualty ward, in the admission wards. The first thing that you face when you go out there is just the hygiene. Before you talk of equipment, which you're talking about, just the hygiene. You then wonder, how do these people come out healed out of this place? It's not fine. But again, it comes to resource allocations, priorities, connected to economic performance. How do you generate money to invest in your health sector? Yes, there's a private health health sector. But what about the population that are not able to pay fully for those services? But the beauty of these things is that if you manage your private health sector properly, common minimum standards, the public health sector delivered publicly, not the way the people here will understand it, not a listed company, but step on to take care of those who are less privileged, less able to afford private medical services. But if you don't support the private health sector, you are actually encumbering the public health sector as well. Because you are failing to offload some of the population that can go into private health facilities. I agree with you. I think arguing or debating this issue with you is not fair. I agree with you. It can be made better. I think as a party, we are clear of our intentions in the health sector, as we are in education. By the way, for the issue of agriculture, there are protocols Zambia is failing to fulfill. The Maputo Protocol, SADC Protocol on agriculture, entails that each of the SADC countries must invest not less than 10% of their annual budget in agriculture, as they've, I think, done that in education and health. We are not meeting many of those. Why? Because we're spending money extravagantly on election, by election. I think you are aware that since PF came into office, my brother there, it's been election season throughout. Election after election, prompted by the PF to try and gain majority in parliament so that they fail to deliver the constitution. So this is extravagant. This is a waste of money, which should go in health and education and in agriculture. So I think that's really good. Conflict of interest. My colleague here, conflict of interest. I think this can be an issue, but it's a matter of attractiveness. You're not doing it for a small business. You are doing it if you improve the agricultural sector attractiveness. There are bigger people who will invest, bigger businesses who will invest in agriculture. More than my little big production. You see? But also, I'm a believer that we are seeking public office not to go and make politics an enterprise exercise, to profit from politics. We fundamentally believe that those seeking public office, especially to our level, at the present in Zambia and in Africa, must have alternative income, gainful income outside politics. The reason is that you are going to go there and work on improving economy and sectors. And if the sector grows, I'll be very happy, because if Zambians' disposable incomes increase, they will buy more of my beef. I don't think there will be corruption in there. Frankly speaking, the potential for corruption is higher on those politicians who have no alternative income and seek public office as a business.
Is it right?
Let me be blunt here. I am not a professional politician. I don't want to be a professional politician. I think the vices associated with professional politics, at least for Africa, have proven to be fatal to the population. Appetite for corruption is high. The appetite for nepotism, the appetite for sustaining, reinventing oneself in office so that you can end up with a president's retirement home. Frankly speaking, if you are seeking the presidency and you want the taxpayer in a compound to build you a $5 million home, there must be something wrong with it. Leaders in Africa must be assisting citizens to build homes, to acquire homes, not to be in front of the queue. I think it's a shame. I would rather be a businessman. I would rather encourage business people to enter politics. Because of their financial independence, they are likely to challenge what I call routine in African politics. How do you help each other to stay in office, yet the economy is dysfunctional? I think we should have more professionals going into politics, perform their national service, missionary work, come out and make tea for yourself.
Okay. Right. Very, very quick questions now. Very quick answers.
Mr. President, thank you so much for...
Oh, Mr. Moderator, I deliberately avoided that actually.
All right. Okay.
But I can be fair to them if you allow me.
You are seeking the presidency after having tried 4 times, and that is what suggests that the electorate are not interested in your leadership.
But my question is, how do you hope to create prosperity that will cut across the Zambian society? Why I ask this question is because...
That's okay, that's a very good question.
It is a good question, right. But because the country is faced with chronic poverty, which poverty can be felt in all sectors of our society. Now, people have gone into office to amass wealth, and because of that, we find that it's not been easy for politicians, as HH indicated, that some people get into politics in order to access big money. How does he hope to make sure that those that are in leadership in his government are prevented from corrupt practices, as is the case in this part of the world?
All right, that's fine. That's a good question. Okay. I'm here. There's one in the front row.
Richard, can I please?
Yes, all right. Okay.
Mr. President, thank you so much for your presentation. My question is a quick one. It's regarding the issue of dual citizenship. And this is the issue that has actually impeded a lot of skills transfer. And most of the examples that you are seeing here actually have dual nationality secretly, because, for example, I'm doing my PhD.
Okay, very quickly. Just come to your question.
Okay, so what's your take on dual nationality?
All right, great. Okay.
Okay, Mr. HH, there is a recognition in Africa and in Zambia in general that the presidency has got too much power. When you become president in 2016, because it's not a question of if, what powers of presidency are you going to give up?
Yeah. I think the colleague on the what will we do to ensure development across the country.
I think this is the subject of tonight's conversation. We've said it and said it over and over that it's a quality of leadership which will answer that paradox of poor people in a rich country. It's a policy choices, you know. It's the ability to implement, follow through those policies and ensure effective implementation. But really, you have to create to support investment. You have to support business success. There are no other ways. They're not there. The isms don't matter anymore in our environment. Communism, socialism, those issues don't matter anymore. What matter are basic issues of job growth, business opportunities. So you can look after the less privileged. There's no other way. None in that. Leadership. The issue of presidents flying out when they're ill. I was actually deliberate in omitting it because I don't want a major headline in Zambia out of this presentation to be on HH says the president is sick and he's flown to China for medical care. Because that's what it will be. And that's what it's been. And leaving the issues that are important that we've discussed tonight. You see? But frankly speaking, it's a responsibility of leadership to improve health services delivery. For you as a nurse, health services delivered is not just a medicine for citizens of Zambia and any citizens anyway. It's not just a medicine, it's not just a equipment. It's also looking after the health provider. Like you. Many of you are here because you're not well looked after in Zambia. The brain drain causing shortages, the nurse to patient ratio in our country is unacceptably high. Nowhere one nurse can look after 200 patients in different wards. How possible is that? Doesn't matter how good you are. So these are issues that can only be again dealt with if we improve health services delivery. The institutional side, the building, the brick and mortar, the equipment, the medicine, and also the providers, health service providers. But it's still a function of ability to fund the health sector. It's still a function of the business success, economic success. I return to this subject because that's my intention tonight, to argue that if you can't run your economy properly, you cannot run other sectors properly. I think that's my message. The voters didn't pay attention to us for a long time. My predecessor, Andy Mazoga, carried the same message. The party, UBS, has been consistent. Now the voters have realized that the rhetoric of 90 days can never deliver anything. We've got to return to the basics. And I think that's why you see our momentum is strong. The issue, I think I've answered the poverty reduction, the dual citizenship. You're very courageous to say what you've said. I wouldn't have said it. I would have said it in a different way.
It's illegal.
No. The point I'm making is different. It's their stay here. I mean, if you illegally carry, but I don't want to repeat it in case it draws their attention. I think it's important in today's world really to consider dual citizenship. Very important. To consider it positively. Earlier I was talking about the value of the diaspora, the skills, the networking, the capital raising, the experiences that can be brought to bear in our country. I'm aware that many of you who live outside Zambia have been ridiculed by the PS government that you are traitors. I would not treat you as traitors. We have non-citizens living in Zambia, doing business, investing, taking a risk in our country. And I think the Global Village entails thinking different about how we view citizens outside of the country. People have no jobs, like those graduates who were demonstrated under in sales. If they got an opportunity for a job outside Zambia, won't they take the opportunity? I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs means food, job, look after your children, shelter, it's very important. So you cannot talk of being a trader. I think it's associated with the subject of question. This person is speaking, I'm looking away, and I just seated next to me. Those that follow the constitutional making process in Zambia understand that one of the fundamental provisions in the draft constitution is separation of powers. To ensure that overriding powers of the executive over the judiciary, over the legislature, should be curtailed. I hope my colleague, Mr. Mashla, the Honorable Mashla, is here. The executive, in the definition of through the Zambian constitution, is the president. The president constitutes the executive. Everyone else works for him and is his appointee, isn't it? To a large extent. So it means the executive's powers are overbearing. And it's not an issue of HH's desire. It's an issue of balancing the equation,
the president's executive is too strong. President, if you're a Zambian, can detain you without reason. Without reason. I don't think David Cameron can detain a British citizen in the same manner. I think that's why we need a new constitution. And that's why we needed it delivered like yesterday. And many people argue on this subject that you can't eat a constitution. That's what the PF is saying, my friend. So you want a new constitution, you need food, not a new constitution. Constitution is a piece of it. That's what the PF said. After promising us the constitution in Nigeria, they formed government and said, no, this is a piece of it. You need food, more than a constitution. Food is in the constitution. Limited powers of the president are in the draft constitution. Earlier I was talking about debt here. $8 billion plus. There is no control over executive how much debt they acquire and for what use they apply. There's nothing. We would like to see that in a new constitution. To instill some responsibility in those that take public office with an extravagant money. Thank you.
I think we could have quite comfortably gone on for another hour. I think the questions were thank you so much for answering them so directly. I don't take this the wrong way, but you don't sound like a politician. But you're a businessman. Yeah, it was really enlightening, and I think we all enjoyed it. So a big hand. We wish you well for next year. Thank you very much.